Welcome to the Fireside Chat session for Foodland Ventures Food Tech Virtual Demo Day. I'm Victor, founder and CEO of Foodland Ventures. I'll be your moderator of today's Fireside Chat session. We're very honored to be joined by top-tier VCs and accelerators today. As you may know, Foodland Ventures is dedicated to help connect food tech startups to the global market and the food tech ecosystem all around the world. So today, we're very glad to have industry heavyweights with lots of experience in the food tech investment in multiple markets joining us. We'll look into a little bit about the topic of global food tech investment and talk a little bit more about the future of the food industry. First of all, on the bottom left, we want to welcome Rohit Agarwal, the Vice President of Sequoia India, who is currently based in Singapore. He's very experienced in the Southeast Asia and Asian market, and also in food tech. He has been on the board of multiple food tech startups and now investing in various food and tech companies. Hi, Rohit.
Hi, Victor. Pleasure to meet all of you.
And on the bottom right, we have William Baobin, General Partner at SOSV and Managing Director of Chinaccelerator and Mox, one of the most active accelerator and VC worldwide in the investment sector, who is also very familiar with the Chinese, US, and Southeast Asian market. Will is always flying around all over US and Asia. And you're currently at East Coast, the US?
Yeah, I'm in the US East Coast, getting ready to fly back to Shanghai. Great to be here. SOSV is the #1 most active investor in food tech in the world, I think, according to Ag Funder. So quite active in the space, and really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Will. And last but not least, we have Leo Hayashima joining us from Tokyo. He's the Managing Director at Food Tech Studio Bytes, the food tech accelerator run by the Silicon Valley and Japan-based Scrum Ventures, which has multiple accelerator focus on food tech, sports tech, smart city. And hi, Leo.
Hi, Victor. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really honored to be a part of this great session today. So I hope I can tell you and audiences about Japanese tradition based on my experience. Thank you.
All right. As you guys can tell, we are very lucky today to get insights all across the world from expert investors from multiple geographic areas. And because we think that the accelerated growth of the food tech sector is a global phenomenon, and we encourage not only our own portfolio startups to go global, but also new food tech founders all around the world to join us today to understand more about the different geographic specialties and challenge in each area. All right, let's get right into the topics today. Food tech. Food tech is often a very broad term, and at Foodland Ventures, we always say it's a technology enabling sectors from the farm to table. So it's quite a broad range. For example, smart supply chain, biotech in the food sector, agri-tech, and on the business and consumer sector like automation, SaaS, and for the newer business concept like cloud kitchens, even tech-enabled like direct-to-consumer brands, food brands nowadays. And I'd like to ask all the speakers, what is your definition of food tech, and which specific sector are you guys looking actively in your market? Perhaps tell us a little bit about an example of one of the most interesting or unexpected portfolios that you guys invested in the food tech sector. Let's start with Rohit to tell us about like the Southeast Asia market and the food tech portfolios that you're familiar with.
Hey, thanks, Victor. We're based in Southeast Asia, and Southeast Asia is 600 million people population, and almost 100 billion plus annual spend on food services. So it's a gigantic sector from a market opportunity perspective for us. We have been looking at, and I've actually been investors in almost all manifestations of food tech. So from food delivery with players like Gojek to POS providers with players like Mochaboss, where I had the chance to serve on the board for 2 years, and also now more recently into actual food brands. So we're investors in companies like Kopi Kenangan and Lemonilo, which are all sort of disrupting the food supply chain as well as bringing new products to the market. From our perspective, we see that there are potentially two very key areas which could be disrupted with technology and also new age retail models which are enabled by technology. I think the first is that the food supply chain inherently is very, very inefficient. If you come to think of everywhere from where the food is produced to how it arrives to end consumers, there are at least in markets, and especially emerging markets like Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, there are 5 to 10 middlemen. And I think a lot of startups are going after disintermediating the supply chain and bringing more and more proximity and removing inefficiencies between food producers and consumers. So I think that's one big area where a lot of e-grocery startups, a lot of supply chain startups, companies like Kargo, which is a logistics company in Indonesia, all of these players are playing a role. And on the front end of the kitchen, once the food is prepared, there are a lot of newer models emerging. Obviously, food delivery is very widely known and now well established around the world. But we're also seeing, Victor, to your point, what is an unexpected company that we ended up investing in? I would like to call out Kopi Kenangan. It's a very interesting model in that it's obviously grab and go. So they are building a Starbucks for Indonesia, but with no dine-in space. And you have these small kiosks like grab and go stores, and actually all the orders come through the app. So customers pre-order their coffee or whatever beverages they want on an app and just go and pick up and move on. So it's helping them in a way with technology and also bring a lot more affordability to premium products within Indonesia. So it's a pretty interesting space, and we're seeing actually more and more, like even Lemonilo, which is a company that we recently partnered with. It's disrupting food with a healthy positioning. So it's bringing products with health focus to the market for the first time in Indonesia, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting to see that not only like the tech scalable sector of the food tech sector, but also like tech-enabled food brands that's growing faster and faster. I think now when we talk about food tech nowadays, it's not only technology startups, it's actually food startups also. What about William? Well, can you tell us a little about the food tech investment trend that you're seeing from the Chinese and perhaps US market? And is there similar things that you're seeing happening?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so we invest across biotech, internet and software, and even hardware. On the biotech side, we're super interested in the disruption of the sort of animal protein. Right now, animal protein is still 98% plus of the market, less than 2% as in alternative proteins. And so we think there's a huge opportunity there. And we've invested up and down that chain. We're probably the most active investor in the world in this area. Companies like Perfect Day, Notco, Upside Foods, which used to be known as Memphis Meats. So one of a couple of recent investments out of Taiwan is Lipid. And what they're doing is basically oil that tastes like meat fat. So you get that kind of meaty, fatty flavor without the actual animal. And so while there's some leaders out there in the market, we think it's not a competition between the players, but in fact, it's more about just growing the market in favor of these alternative proteins. And some of the people on our team think that within 30 years, we won't be eating animals anymore. I wouldn't go that far. But I would say that it's a little bit like sports cars. Animals are, some people drive them, some people drive them for the experience. Some people will eat animals, some people will eat animals for the experience, but it won't be the everyday. And then just to follow on with what Rohit is saying, I mean, we're actively involved in the food supply chain and ecosystem. One of our companies, Supply Note, out of India, is helping these mom and pop restaurants And the challenge there is India. You got like 400 ingredients. You're buying microscopic quantities of them, and there's many middlemen. You're out in an open marketplace. So what Supply Note does is it creates a platform connecting the suppliers to the restaurants. And on average, we're seeing a 70% increase in profit for the restaurants just within the first month, because they're aggregating their purchasing with other restaurants. So not only is it mom and pop, but also small chain. And we're also supporting the largest cloud kitchen player in India. Bringing together that type of aggregation of demand should really change the market significantly. We're active across the spectrum, from the actual food side to the software and internet and platform side. And then last thing is just restaurants have tough time. It's a low margin business to begin with. COVID's been very difficult, and now the delivery guys are basically taking all the profit from the restaurants. So we've invested in a couple of technology platforms, Skilla Discount in Indonesia, also BistroChat and Blink in Pakistan, BistroChat in Hong Kong. And these companies are disaggregating the food delivery companies, working directly with the restaurants and cutting out the big delivery players and giving the full profit of the delivery to the restaurant owner and allowing them to have a living again. So thanks.
Yeah, that's very cool. I think it's cool to see that there's definitely a first wave of like the delivery disruption, and there's even more solution that's coming to hack out the problem that's created by the delivery tech. I think that's a generation of food tech that's growing that we're seeing already. All right. How about Lil? We know that Japan is kind of known for a very advanced food manufacturing sector. What kind of food tech portfolios are you looking at Scrum Ventures? And do you have any favorite ones that you guys invested in?
Yeah, so so first speak a little about Scrum Ventures, our venture capital. So we are San Francisco based, starting from San Francisco in 2012. And so they're working across the US and Japan, and we focus on the early stage startups from seed to Series A. And we are so basically sector agnostic. So we have invested in over 80 companies, and of course, so some of them are food tech related. So in US, say Grab Market, so kind of farm to table food delivery. They raised 90 million in the latest round, Series D, on last February, expanding their service rapidly. And so talking a little about Japanese market, the food tech market in Japan is a little behind from US and Europe, like 5 years or 3 years. And so even a big food tech startup, so still their raise amount is 10 or 20 million. But in Japanese food industry started to working on food tech rapidly from last year under the corona pandemic. So and ministries and agencies have also started to support the food tech sector by like setting up councils on food tech last year. So now in Japan, so we also invested in food tech related startups. So one of our portfolio is the food code, the kind of the carry change. So with the mobile, very digital, providing a very digital experience. And so we are still looking for any kinds of the great food tech startups in Japan and also US and the restaurant tech or agri-tech. So for us, so now we are launching a new fund in this summer, and so we want to focus on more on food tech sectors in Japan to do a good job to keeping Japanese food tech industry thriving.
That's awesome. I think the food tech sector is definitely gaining more and more awareness. I think it's good to see that we're building funds specifically for food tech, and it's definitely very interesting to see in multiple markets, and not only in tech, but again, kind of echo Rohit and Lil in the same time, that food brands are actually being tech enabled and scaled globally in different geographic areas. All right. As you guys know, in the audience today, we have lots of Taiwanese startup joining us. Having also based in Taiwan, I think William, you know that very well that we have lots of great tech talents and a really robust food industry from farm to table here in Taiwan, but with a very, very small market. So food tech startup coming out of Taiwan needs to have a global mindset from the very start to be able to find success globally. I like to kind of ask every one of us speakers today that what characteristics do you guys think that a startup needs to possess in order to gain success in different markets, perhaps in specific markets that you guys are familiar with? And what are the differences between the markets? I know that you guys kind of cross geographic area, have those experience. And what does it take to have for a food tech startup to go global outside of its home market? I think I'll pass this question to William to tell us a little bit about Taiwanese startup first, and maybe perhaps tell us a little bit about Chinese startups going global.
Yeah, sure. So I think the key to understand is that unless you're coming out of the US or maybe China, possibly India, your home market's going to be too small to build a large scale business. And so especially in food tech and agriculture tech, you want to be present in multiple markets for almost all the companies. So we help with that. And so three things to just really pay attention to. One is you want to go into a market where the product or platform or solution or service that you're providing actually solves a problem in that market. And that's not always the case. So, you know, if something's built for Taiwan, it might not be a good fit for India because India is very different than Taiwan, right? You know, you need to basically figure out whether you're actually solving an on-the-ground local problem in the markets. The second thing is, you know, you need to go there, right? So we invested in Bigo Wang, and out of Kaohsiung. The goal here was help them expand out of Taiwan, where they're a leader, into Southeast Asia and across the world. But Kevin, the CEO, had never been to Southeast Asia before. So the first thing we did was bring him to Southeast Asia, introduce him to companies, introduce him to partners, and help him, you know, get to know the local ecosystems. And now, you know, he's a price compare e-commerce platform #1 in Thailand, #1 in Malaysia, doing very well in Singapore and Indonesia, just taking, you know, they're doing like 20%, 30% week on week growth, very profitable. And scaling. And not only, but it, you know, it wasn't like the first time. This is their second time into Singapore. First time failed, second time's doing well. This is their second time going into Indonesia. First time failed, second time's doing well. Their first attempt into Japan and Italy also both failed. But that doesn't, you know, don't let that stop them. So the third thing is, you know, you might fail, but don't give up. And so, you know, take your unfair advantage. In Bigo's case, they're just very technical and understand search and advertising extremely well, and really try and drive that across and make sure you're solving that local problem. And if you at first fail, don't give up. Try again.
Yes, definitely. I think that's a good takeaway for all startups trying to, especially in the food sector, trying to go global. I think being present to actually find part of market fit remotely is actually kind of a hard thing, and you kind of have to actually be in the market to actually succeed. How about Lil? What about characteristics for Japanese startups? Do you guys think that there's specific things that you guys look into or kind of want to reinforce for Japanese startups trying to go global?
Yeah, so from the Japanese standpoint, so as you may know, most of Japanese startups are still really domestic. Since they access the certain side of the market only in Japan. But in order to go global, so I think, you know, the communication skill is most important. So not only language, so to understand the cultural or gap, or, you know, what is the difference. So we see many Japanese corporates struggle to develop a new business with global and Japanese startups to make a global business. And we have supported to make their communications smooth by, you know, explaining culture gap and market differences through the food tech studio bites. And so another point is, so this is a Japanese specific ones, but R&D resources. So in Japan, so most researchers and engineers are still in corporates. So, and there are very few people who, you know, dive into the startup world. So in order to accelerate the growth of the food tech startups, so we would like to encourage researchers and engineers to see startups as an attractive options.
Definitely, we'll definitely love to see more and more collaboration between corporates and startups. I think that's one of with the power of both, I think that's definitely one of the keys to find success globally. What about the Southeast Asia and the Asia-India market? Rohit, I think we talked a little bit about this before, but I think finding success locally first, and perhaps that's one of the key also. Can you talk to us a little bit about this more, about like how you kind of encourage different startups, especially from Singapore? I think a lot of the startups coming out of Singapore has a very global mindset. How do you encourage that, and how do you kind of help them go global?
Yeah, I think both William and Rio touched on the same topic, which is it's super important to understand the market and the market context. And I think food is one such category where it's not just about the product, but it's about the experience as much as it's about the product, and which means the experience counts from everything from how the food shows up to how it's packed to what's on the label and so on and so forth. So there's so many different aspects to experience which are shaped by both the actual food product, but also the communication around it, the positioning around it, the branding around it, and so on and so forth. So I think, and this changes more than the product changes by market. Like you could say the same Coca-Cola or a pizza or a fried chicken from one part of the world to the other, but its communication, its presentation, its go-to-market varies quite dramatically by market, and what could be premium in Indonesia could actually be mass affordable in Singapore, and so on and so forth. So we have like these different markets across the spectrum on a affordability curve as well. So I think it's pretty interesting how brands that are seen as quite premium and luxury in Indonesia are seen as affordable or mass market in high income countries like Singapore and US and so on and so forth. So I think it's just sort of combining those two words together and building things which could potentially go seamlessly across markets, and especially emerging markets. I think most of the brands that are coming out of Singapore or startups that are coming out of Singapore, they are now designing, keeping in mind the needs of Indonesia or Vietnam or India, both consumers as well as merchants that they would be serving. I think one of the very interesting things that we're seeing, and this goes more for SaaS startups, we're seeing that more and more SaaS startups out of Singapore are now designing for the small merchant in mind. They're designing for the small restaurant that runs with, say, a 5-people team versus trying to build for the McDonald's and the KFCs and the big chains of the world, because they think that look, the big chains are globally well served, and their IT and tech buying all sort of happens from the headquarters, and a small upstart from Southeast Asia might not have the best shot getting success with them in the early days. And so a lot of them are focused on building for these small merchants in Indonesia, India, Vietnam, like just across Southeast Asia, there are 100 million plus small merchants, not all in food, but like, that's what the opportunity is and the bulk of the opportunity is.
That's definitely a very good perspective to have for food tech startups going after the global market. I think to kind of echo on that, we talked a lot about this before, but you kind of also have to find success locally to extend before you kind of go after the global market, while keeping in mind that you kind of have to design with a specialty DNA, going after different markets, not just kind of duplicate the exact same thing over different geographic areas. That's a good takeaway for all startups trying to go global. All right, kind of want to talk about a little bit about the current kind of global COVID situation and the post-COVID world going forward for the food tech industry. Because as all of you guys know, that 2020 has been quite a big year for agri and food tech sector with total investment of more than 22 billion. I think COVID has definitely accelerated many adoption of new technologies and innovation in the food sector. My last question for all of you guys, is how do you think that COVID has affected the food sector? And what do you guys think our food industry will be like in the future of post-COVID? And let's start with Lil to talk a little bit about the Japanese market, one of the market that's hit the most currently, but also solving it, and also will be hosting the Olympics soon, hopefully.
Yeah, so same as the word, as another word. So the current pandemic hits very heavily in Japan. So we are still under the state of emergency in Tokyo, and so even as Victor said, so Olympic is still coming soon. So, but now the restaurants in Tokyo are not fully open, so still open by 8 at night. So, but in these days, so we are more conscious on wellness than ever before, and also becoming conscious on sustainability as well. So we realized that the traditional model of mass production and mass consumption will not be viable in the near future. So we has to be changed. So with that as a backdrop, food techs will become more and more adapted, I think. So in fact, let's say alternative protein products started to delivered in a supermarket or even in a convenience stores in Japan. So and be tried mainly by younger generations. And back in 20th century, the Japanese food industry invented many items that are still loved in recent years. So like Nissin invented the cup noodles, or Fuji Oil started to develop soy meat in 1960s. So that the fact is not known by all over the world, but this is I think this is very honored to what Japanese can go global. So I hope to see the companies and startups bring their strengths together to create new products, which is very specific for wellness or sustainability, and to enrich people's their lives and become the inventors of the 21st century. Yeah, so I'm very looking forward to the future of the Japanese food market.
Cool. What about the China and US market? Well, are you seeing like differences in adaptation and technology in the food sector, and will it continue to kind of grow even post-COVID, do you think?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you just look at e-commerce, e-commerce grew last year in China about 20% to 1.5 trillion US dollars. US at the same time grew 65% year on year, but only hit about 840 billion, right? So China still 2x. People are spending, just this year, in terms of food products, food retail, up 20% in the first 4 months this year. Again, so you're seeing people really embrace even more than before, and China's the #1 in the world for this. Going online, digital, but they still want to kind of know where their food is coming from. So you've seen a lot of TikTok, Douyin videos where farmers are holding up their chickens, and then you just click and buy, and then you get the chicken that you picked out on the internet. And so you want to see that the chickens are happy, healthy, and hopefully going to be tasty. The infrastructure, the traditional kind of wet markets, which are open markets where there's live animals and piles of vegetables and meat hanging from hooks. COVID has really put a hit on those because a lot of early COVID cases spread from wet markets, and so you're going to see a much more formalization of the supply chain. And this should not just be in China, but probably across Asia. And I think Rohit already spoke to that a little bit. The informal kind of unstructured wet market type of the market framework is probably going to gradually go away.
Definitely. So kind of going back to Rohit, to kind of give us a final perspective on like maybe Asia and Southeast Asia. Do you think that this COVID situation has accelerated the growth, and perhaps maybe after COVID, would the behavior stay, or would it be or would that kind of tone down a little bit, perhaps? That's I'm gonna be getting a lot of information from the restaurant industry, hoping that the world will change into its normal state. But I think there's more and more behaviors that's being built, and I'd like to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, again, echo a lot of points that William and Rohit made on how COVID has changed the food industry and what the emerging trends coming out of it are. I'd like to, maybe highlight one or two other points which have been quite interesting. I think one big shift, obviously, as we are all on Zoom, we are all working from home, and that means there's a lot more consumption happening at home versus dine-in or versus in offices, and so on and so forth. And how can food industry adopt itself for that? Because largely most of the consumption so far had been out of home. You were spending majority of the time that you were awake in offices or outside the home or meeting friends and so on and so forth. And now you're spending all of that time at home, and that's shifting consumption behavior from, structured meals to small snackings throughout the day, and how do food companies adopt to that. It also means that a very simple example of that is we've never seen freshly brewed coffee in family pack sizes. It's always been you want your regular or a large or a small cup. But at the peak of the pandemic, Kopi Kenangan saw that a lot of people were ordering for the first time 4 or 5 cups at a time, and that meant that they're all pretty at home and they're ordering. And when at home, in markets like Indonesia, you have big families, you're ordering for the entire family at one go because you don't want to pay the delivery fees 5 times. And they've adopted and made it into a nice family pack bottle, which was a very different serving from what they were used to. So I think there are these tiny consumer behavior shifts as well, which have happened as a result of COVID, and companies could evolve themselves and place themselves to serve the customers better with a better experience that's designed for consumption at home.
Definitely. I think it's definitely very interesting to see how COVID has accelerated both on adoption of many technology in the food industry in different geographic area, as today we all kind of talk about. And by talking to you guys has definitely made me even more excited about the future of food industry. I'm really confident that the food tech sector will continue to grow in the coming years. Not only are we seeing entrepreneurs building great startups in the food tech sector, but also world-class investors such as Sequoia India, SOSV, and Scrum Ventures, spearheading the investment to move the food industry forward. Very happy to chat with you all today. And thanks again, Rohit, William, Lil, for joining us today on Foodland Ventures' very first food tech demo day to share about your expert insights. And now we will be moving on to the very exciting presentation of the 6 food tech startups of Foodland Ventures' first food tech demo day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.